Botswana has got an increasingly young population. It's an increasing population, and it's a younger and younger population year by year. Along with the increasing population, Botswana also has increasing unemployment. And we've also got a stagnant economy that is still dependent primarily on mining in order to bring in wealth to the country. Now, this creates three distinct problems. Firstly, how to diversify our economy. Secondly, how to create opportunities for the youth that are coming out of our secondary schools and our universities, and how to create a safety net for all of those that fall through and are not able to find opportunities and are not able to find employment and are living a standard of living that is not acceptable in what is currently a middle income economy. So the discussion in today's Voice of the People episode is about whether or not Botswana should be entitled to an unemployment allowance. My name is Fangz. I am your host, and I'm joined as usual by my co-host, Chief Fangz. How's it going, Chief?
Fantastic, Mr. Fangz. How you doing, man?
I'm doing brilliant, but it's not just you and me. I get it. We are joined.
Yeah, but we have a whole team.
We have a whole technical team.
It takes a village to raise a child.
That's right, and this
is
is
a team to make a podcast.
Yes, to make a Voice of the People.
Yeah.
And as on that note, we've got obviously our director and producer, Mr. Nick Bonte. How's it going, Nick?
Chilling, guys. How's it going?
Excited to discuss unemployment. And then on top of that, we've got our technical director, Mr. Izzy.
Yep. So, yeah, Mr. Fangz, today, we're going unemployment day. We are 59 days away from the World Cup. But yeah, I just thought I'd add that in there.
Yes,
so we're talking about unemployment benefits, Mr. Fangz.
Yeah.
It's not a strange concept. It's something that's there in other countries around the world. Maybe just give a brief background. I'll give you a couple of examples of where it exists. Just tell us what exactly are the unemployment benefits.
Exactly.
And why are we having this? Well, you told us why we're having this.
But what exactly do I mean? Yeah, and how does it connect to what we were talking about, right? So unemployment benefit essentially is, it's called different things in different countries. The dole in the United Kingdom, Social Security in the United States. We don't have an equivalent in Botswana. Okay. But the point is an allowance or a little package that basically every month, because you don't have a job, increasingly every day, so that you don't end up starving.
Yeah, look, it's a noble concept of which on today's debate I disagree with, right? But that's where we stand.
You've already pitched your flag, I see.
Yeah, I've already pitched the hill that I'm going to die on. But what's interesting is that there are certain conditions that you need to meet for you to qualify. In some countries, like different countries do it different ways. I was reading up about India, for example.
Yes.
You have to have worked for at least 3 years previously.
At least 2 kilo
and then there's a limit for the amount of time that you can get this benefit for. So, it's noble, but like I said, I completely disagree with it. And yeah, we'll get into the debate. Maybe.
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, before we get into some of the comments that came from our live audience, I'm thinking the main thing that I look at it as, Chief, and this is my principle. You spoke about your hill. This is a hill on which I stand. We don't die on my hill, right? The idea is that what would people do in society? Right now, we want to diversify economy. We want to create opportunities for people. We want to make sure, right?
Yeah.
But we don't know how to diversify our economy. The government, and I applaud them for, Bonebo Youth, YDF, East Party, Cedar. There's many different.
All these things.
Yes, for sure.
I like that you're mentioning
For sure.
Opportunities
Hey, when I namola luba,
that are
when I but the problem is with all of these things, unfortunately, right, we are not getting the diverse economy that we want, right? Okay. So our farming industry, as much money has been poured into it as there has been, right, it's not going to a point where it can sustain Botswana and our population on its own. So what I like to think is the problem that's happening here is that the government is looking at it from the top, right, top down, and all of these initiatives, they're coming from the top down to people, down to the people. And not by any fault of its own. It doesn't understand what it's like to be you and me, right? To be unemployed, to deal with the issues that you deal with on a day-to-day basis. People can, right? People can, and they don't have time, unfortunately, to be able to invest in the various things, to invest the time to build the various different things that could eventually become an alternate industry. So maybe if we gave people so that at least
you know what you need to prove out so that you show us that this will actually work is how giving people money for being unemployed is going to translate as a solution to all the problems you mentioned, the diversification of the economy, and all of these other things, right? Because, like you already mentioned, the government is doing a lot, right? There's all of these programs that are encouraging entrepreneurship. We've seen how the borders have been shut for certain products, there's all these initiatives that are already happening, right? So you need to prove to us why just an unemployment benefit is somehow going to diversify the economy. I believe completely it won't, right? But before we get into our debate, we invite the live comments, man, because this is the voice of the people, so we want to hear from the people.
There's a comment from Kelvin Utlanang. An insightful debate indeed, but how is it going to change the policies if the leaders don't see the need? I like that, it rhymes.
I mean, this is again where I disagree with you that our government, everything is from top down and they don't listen and everything, because one of the beauties of our government is that it's built on this principle of consultation. Actually, just yesterday, the president was receiving an award in the States for being a shining example of what, and youth development and youth empowerment. You get what I mean? So I do believe that our government actually has insight, because there's all these different mechanisms, like I said. So when people go to Leah and talk about these are the things that are interested, you're in a feedback, it comes to the government. So now just simply giving people money for being unemployed, not only does it not give them anything, but it goes against what they're trying to do of getting people who to stand up and do something. That's the reason, the concept behind backyard farming. It's the fact that, look, now your policy just encourages laziness.
Okay, so I mean, all right, gift mokopanele kena go arabang the best are kana ditlhoko di gaufi ba ka simolole ako ba simolole
me gift ene it's gonna be like an incentive to vote or whatever.
I mean, I tell you what. There's a problem. There's a problem with youth voter apathy, right? I bet you if you start giving unemployment allowance, right, them youth gonna vote. But even more.
That's a vote that I don't want, Fangz.
Even more.
That's a vote that I don't want, because it's based on the incorrect incentives, right?
What are the correct incentives?
Literally, in politics of the stomach.
What is the right incentives? There's no right incentive to vote, Chief.
It is. You want leadership that's quality. You want leadership
that comes with innovative ideas like this.
Money please.
Money please. I wanna put it this way, right? because you put an onus on me, right? You asked me, Rhoda, how do I establish that giving people money for sitting at home is going to somehow result in development of alternate industries? I'll give you an example, right? Today, there was an article I came across talking about how South Africa's music industry is worth 2 billion rands, right? Two, and I don't like the Yanos. But what that told me was that art at some point, and I mean, you know, Hollywood and the American music industry worth billions more, right? And how does art develop as an artist, right? I'll tell you, it develops when you invest time into it. That's the most thing. You need to spend time developing your craft. Unfortunately, in this country, we don't have a society that is structured such that it pays for artists to try and develop their craft and try and establish themselves, right? Our artists, the vast majority of artists in this country are the typical starving artists. And very few of the successful artists have any real measure of success. As in, like, I could probably count on one hand the number of artists in any industry that could send their kids to the best schools in this country, for example, can afford to do that, right? And my point is, in order to invest the time that you need to develop your arts, to develop your painting, your DJing, your music, your whatever else it is, you can't be stressing about what am I going to eat today. If you are, right, if you are, what ends up happening, you go find a job, say maybe pouring petrol or something, and that's what you're doing 10, 12 hours a day. When you get home, you have no time to invest in that industry. And then we wonder why Botswana does not have any alternate industries and we're still dependent on government tenders and mining.
Two things, right? Number one, we don't all want to be artists, right?
No, I'll give you another example shortly.
We don't all want to be artists, so not that this issue, you actually be at home, kid drawer. It doesn't apply to you, right?
Okay.
But secondly, right, if like you are an artist and it's something that is within you, right, you shouldn't have to be incentivized to create art. The best artists, and that's why we see the best MCs, the best producers, whenever Kanye West, they started when they were kids, right? This thing, it came from a passion, and that's what art is. It's an expression of your passion.
Yes.
So now, we're not going to...
And the point is the passion is being killed.
You're taking something like that you're saying to artists, basically, like, look, we want to give you more time to be able to create your art, so stay at home, right? And now you're taking something that other people are not even interested in, and, you know, somehow forcing it upon them.
No, that's not at all it, right?
Rather, these artists should be out there
pouring petrol,
making sure
pouring petrol, because the reality is that's why our artists, I mean, and there's so many different examples of when one isolated Botswana will be taken and recognized outside of Botswana, right? And then all of a sudden it's, oh, this person is so talented. And there's a good 100 more people that have that level of talent. But they did not get the opportunity to get spotted by this organization in Sweden or this record label. But even if you want to move it away from art and the 2 billion rand industry that it could potentially create, if you're not interested in that, right, let's talk about IT and Silicon Valley, right? And let's talk about how number one, how an industry like IT, which does not require a huge population because the ingenuity happens in a lab on a computer. You don't need that many people. It's not like things like production, which give China a huge comparative advantage. We could actually make some sort of headway in IT. But a lot of the time, these apps that we use that are essentially running the world right now, Chief, the Facebooks, the Twitters, the so on, they literally run for years without making any money. The only reason they were able to get to this point, Chief, is because the people that were making them, either A, came from families that were so wealthy, they could support you. Yeah, they could support you sitting at home. Or two, you've got investors. And we don't have an angel investor industry in this country. So the government has to take that role. Otherwise, industries will not develop.
Look, the companies you're talking about running these things, it goes against your example because these guys are actively employed, doing something, right? These are not companies that are run by guys who are unemployed, not doing anything.
I mean,
they run, even Zuckerberg. Kind of when it gets to the point of even Zuckerberg, right? It started from something he was doing when he was in college.
Yeah.
But we're digressing a little bit, right? Because even what you were talking about earlier about you see, you said so much. Now I lost my train of thought, right? But look, basically the point that I'm trying to get at is, even if you can somehow prove like there's one or two industries that can benefit from people being at home, like art or whatever,
or
right?
IT.
Even with IT, you have to actually be creating, right?
Yes.
But the difference is, yeah, and this is what my point was going to be about your artists. You say that there's isolated artists that leave the country, whatever. How many great artists out there in the world started off their careers pouring petrol, being waiters? Bye-bye. You know what I mean? There's so many examples, like Dr. Dre, these guys were hustling, selling at McDonald's or whatever, then somebody discovered them. My point
There you
is,
go.
yeah,
Somebody discovered them. There's nobody
But
to
they were
discover. There's
working.
nobody to discover them in Botswana,
If you're
Chief.
good enough,
No.
they will discover you.
Who, Chief? I just told you right now. You can't even send your kids to the best schools in this country as an artist.
maybe
Dr.
that's
Dre
right.
owns islands, Chief. Dr. Dre owns. My point is, there is no somebody will discover you in Botswana. There is no getting discovered in Botswana as an artist. There is no I'm going to build a multi-million-dollar startup IT industry in Botswana. There is none of that. Nobody has the time to invest. Hold on.
If you're not
No,
getting discovered, then how are you going to get discovered at home?
my point
But
is.
look, this is a debate about arts now, right?
No, and IT, right? My point is, it's a debate about growing, what you call it. It's a debate about how do you give people the time it takes to develop, right? To develop different things, different ideas, different industries. And the problem is, we all keep saying that, well, if they, people are lazy, they need to work. But if you're busy cleaning all day, if you're busy teaching all day, if you're busy pouring petrol all day, you don't have time to come home and then start being creative. That's literally a full-time job.
All of us would love to just sit at home and be creative.
You just said you didn't want to.
But then, you have to work. You have to put money on the table.
And that's
but this is what
and that's why we also don't have other industries, because we're all working mining and we're all working as government tenders, Chief.
Okay, but this is what today's debate is about, right? Today's debate, it's about whether or not people who are at home getting this benefit or whatever will actually be incentivized to create and actively contribute to the economy. Will they be actually doing that, right? So now I'm very clear on that look, first of all, this doesn't solve any of the problems we're facing, because I don't see how it's going to diversify the economy if the same people who are supposed to be out there working are now all of a sudden at home, right? But more importantly, the biggest problem with unemployment benefits and even with social security in the States, in the UK, is that it encourages some sections of the society to be lazy, right? Because you know that there is this benefit that's guaranteed, that's going to come every month. You don't necessarily have to create value. And that's what employment is. Employment is an exchange of your value for money.
Yeah, you see
So
what that
you're
is.
sitting at home and not creating value. What are you going to do?
Yeah, you see now that for me is problematic, right? Because already, right, economics will tell you that is not how it works, right? Employment is not an exchange for your value, right? No, it's not, because the way that any employer makes their profit is by ensuring they pay you less than your value, right? That is literally no. My point is exactly, you're creating value for someone else, and you are not getting value in return, Chief, right? That's the first problem. You're not getting the same value. The point is, if the employer was paying you what you are worth, they would not be making a profit, right?
Okay,
so, but then what I would like to deal with, right, is this idea of
I want to read this comment quickly before you go on, right? This comment coming in from Bishop Gary Emmanuel Moyana. I personally believe that people should look beyond the government and begin to explore other avenues to make ends meet. The government will not be able to offer everyone capital or start up something. Our mindset should change and begin to think outside the box. Thank you so much, Bishop. That's the third thing, is that we will forever just be dependent on the government.
Right. So then here's my thing, right? This is like the strange analysis that always comes when people are opposed to like government initiatives that help people, right? It's always this thing that, oh yeah, handouts make people lazy, handouts make people, right? And it's absurd because, Chief, nobody likes begging. Nobody likes handouts, right? That does not make you feel good as a human being. That opposes your human dignity. So I think it's extremely insulting to assume that people that are in need, right, we must now make we must now make them feel ashamed of the fact that they're in need because, right, they need help, right? And that's what I'm saying. Why should people be looking beyond the government when literally the government exists to serve the people, right? That is, I mean, that's literally what that comment says, right? And that's how we end up talking about these people are lazy. When the reality of most of these people that we're talking about, everybody's looking for a job. Everybody's trying to create some sort of opportunity for themselves because that's what makes you feel good as a person about being who you are.
Nobody said, I mean, the amount is arbitrary, you know, but nobody said these people are lazy, right? I mean, not that they're beggars or anything like that, but you cannot ignore the nature that comes from constantly receiving handouts. It makes you less proactive, whether or not you want to do it or not. It's just like how Tsotswe in the, you know, like the criticism that's coming to like some of the royals, you know, that these guys were born in a lap of luxury. They've never had to work in their lives. So they're complacent with a lot of things, right?
I mean,
so yeah, obviously it is a theory, like everything.
Yes, that's my point. My point is it's not born out. It's not born out by reality. It's this alternate. It's this alternate world. It's this alternate world theory that, like, when life is easy, because this is at its core. This is what it's saying. When life is a bit too easy for people, then those people are gonna be bad people. And I think that's absurd. And I think that's hold on. I think that's absurd because when you look at the reality, yeah, I mean that's what it is, right? Laziness is a bad thing, a bad quality. So at its core, that's what that analysis is. And my problem with it is, let's look at the real world example, right? Most wealth, right, in the world is inherited, right? Like in the world, about 10 to 13% of people move up, either up or down an income bracket, which means if you're born rich, you're probably going to stay rich, right? What happens is people like Donald Trump, for example, right? Or whoever else, they get born into a family of millionaires. And what happens? Those same millionaire children end up creating billions, right? They had it easy. They had handouts. Their whole lives were easy. They never had to struggle the way you or I did. And what ends up happening? Most of them end up being successes, Chief. That's what the world economy is structured around. So this idea that if people have it easy and they get handouts, they're going to become lazy and unproductive en masse is literally just a fallacy that's not borne out in any reality, Chief.
How much time for break? Okay. No, I mean, look, Fangz, I think you mischaracterized the narrative that our commentators and that I've been talking about what is bred from constantly receiving handouts, right? And you cannot deny this fact, right? That if somebody, and it's this whole thing of like, teach a man to fish, give a man to fish, and give a man a fish, and he'll be expecting a fish from you all the time. But teach a man to fish, and then he'll know how to hunt for himself, right? And this is part of the reason why we get this criticism as Botswana from foreigners who come here. You know this as Botswana, who have been outside of the country for education, and you get this monthly allowance just to go to school, right? Then it breeds this perception. Look, you don't necessarily have to put in as much effort as the guy who's coming from, say, Nigeria, because there is this social net that's going to catch you no matter what happens. You know what I mean? So it's not like people are saying they're bad or anything, but you can't ignore the fact that this trait, it creeps in over time, and that's what getting free money does.
Unemployment allowance won't make you a bad person. It will just make you lazy. International. We will continue this heated debate right after these messages.
No, time is going.
Welcome back to Voice of the People with Chief and Fangz. I want to continue right where we left off with a comment from Kumomwabi Ari. The government is obviously failing dismally to create employment for them. Therefore, they must be entitled to an allowance. In South Africa, for example, the unemployed destitutes are entitled to a monthly allowance. But what I really wanted to do, Chief, I wanted to pick up on the point that you were making, how, because I completely clash with your idea, handouts make people lazy, less productive, anything of the sort, right? And the example, which fair enough, right, was of, say, when you got, immigrant labor, for example, or the reputation that Botswana sometimes get amongst the other Africans, you say, other African countries of being lazy. I don't know about that, right? I would say that at the core, the reality is, right, you have effort being expended into different things, right? So somebody might see you sitting at home, right, with a pen and paper, and you've been sitting here just kind of scribbling, maybe listening to a beat, right, walking around, and what they see is they see someone who's lazy. You say you don't have money. You're lazy. Why aren't you going out there? That's how a reputation like that happens. What is that person doing? That person is trying to write a song that's going to change this country, Chief, right? Or whatever else, right? My point is, my point is, if the world was, if the country was really filled with lazy people, we wouldn't have been the fastest growing economy for 40 of our 55 years. Fastest growing economy in the world for 40 of our 55 years. Yeah, and all of a sudden, overnight, they went lazy. Come on, Chief.
No, they will become lazy.
No, that's absurd. That's absurd. You see,
here's a comment coming in from Bishop Gary Emmanuel. Oh, here's a second comment. Shout out to you. Our government is not responsible for your upkeep. Thanks. The duty of government is to create conducive environment for people to work their way out. Giving money to people is wrong way of empowering individuals. Teach a person to catch the fish, not just give them fish. You create a wrong precedent that you will never be able to deal with. I suggest people should use opportunities the government is creating.
See what I hear about that? I hear a lot of the same truths that you were giving, Chief, right?
Well, he also mentioned that there's a lot of opportunities that the government is creating.
I spoke about those, right? We listed them. I know they're there. They're clearly not doing a good enough job, Chief. That's why the Ministry of Youth talks about how most of the businesses that they fund through the YDF fail, right? I don't think that that's a failure of the youth. That's a failure of the institution of government that is in charge of making that happen. But what I want to deal with primarily is this fallacy, this perceived wisdom. Just because you say things over and over and over again doesn't make them true. Teach a man to fish and all of that. That doesn't necessarily make it true. Saying that handouts make people lazy over and over again doesn't make it true. You need to actually prove that handouts make people lazy, right? And you know what you realize in societies where people do get these handouts that you're talking about, countries like Norway, which year after year comes up with more inventions than any country in the world, countries like Sweden, which has a higher quality of life than 90% of the countries in the world. And you start realizing that no, actually, these countries aren't lazy. They're just looking after their people. And it turns out when you look after your people, right, everything gets a little bit better for everyone.
Yeah, okay, look, I think we need to just like rein this debate back to, you know, the core of what it is, of whether or not somebody is incentivized to go out to look for employment if you are going to keep them at home and give them money, right? Because as much as you say we keep repeating the same things, you haven't proved to us how this person is actively going to try and look for employment.
Yeah, but you see, hold on. That's a problem, though. I'm not saying that it's going to make them look for employment, though, Chief.
Yeah, you're saying that they're going to create songs that are somehow going to change the nation or whatever, you know, and then you mentioned Norway. I don't remember the last artist to come out of Norway.
No.
You know, but the point is here, you know, that as a society, as a government, we need to encourage people to create value for the government.
No, what? For the government?
Not for the government, but giving back, creating value and being through, when I say for the government, I mean through things like getting taxed through your labor. And that's how we develop the society. Now, if, for example, you allow people to just sit at home and get paid for that, how do you encourage them? How do you tax their income so that now we can build roads, build schools? The more people we have working, the better our economy is running, the better the GDP gets, and then overall we get a better functioning country. It's not going to change just because there's a couple of guys at home learning how to write songs, Fangz.
Yes, you know what? It will change because there's a couple people at home writing programs, right? That make the economy a little bit more efficient. That make businesses run a little bit more efficient. Because this is the whole problem. Like, if the government keeps saying, right, and we all keep saying in our country that we want to diversify the economy, and then we tell people, and then what we do is we tell people go and work in the existing industries that already are there, and then hold on, we don't give people the time to come up with ideas to be able to build new industries. And if you want to give people time to build those ideas and invest in those ideas and develop those ideas, then they need time, Chief. And they can't do that if they're either working all day or if they're starving, Chief, right? And that's my problem. My problem is, like, you seem to be coming from a position of the government is what we are all existing to serve here, right? The government does not exist to make things easier for us. The government exists to just kind of govern and just like exist, right? And take taxes from people, right? People must work so that they pay tax. No, Chief. Sometimes some ideas, and this is where it goes back to the Mark Zuckerberg example. You're talking about those guys who are working. Your definition of work is you need to be creating value, right? You need to be generating. Hold on. You need to. No, they weren't, Chief. No, they weren't. Hold on, Chief. Hold on. Yeah, hold on, Chief, right? What was happening there was you have a society, first of all, that already gives people an allowance if they don't have a job. And then secondly, you have people with such obscene amounts of wealth that they can afford to decide, I'm going to invest $1 billion to let you develop this idea for the next 5 years, right? We don't have that. So that means, essentially, Facebook or anything like it will never come from this country, right? Unless we start creating time, right, for people to be able to invest in things that maybe don't pay off today, maybe don't pay off in 6 months, they pay off in 5 years, Chief, right? And the reason, the opposition to this idea that I'm so opposed to is the fact that, oh, well, you know, you have to make money, otherwise you're a lazy person. Otherwise, you're not contributing to the government. And my problem with that is the government should be contributing to people, number one. And number two, we are talking about Chief. And that's, I think, a huge part of this debate that we haven't really spent enough time talking about. You're talking about people that are struggling. And to characterize people that are unemployed as being lazy, that's the reason why they can't find a job, I said once again is insulting, because most kids go to university and work so hard to get these degrees, Chief, and then either the intern for 2 years and then or they just don't get hired, right? And that's extremely depressing. And you start seeing all sorts of problems coming from that right now. We've got all sorts of things like escalating crime rate is happening right now, and that's only going to keep getting worse. We start seeing crimes, there's bank heists and things like that, things that we're not used to. These things are less likely to happen in a society where people are not literally starving for like
There's a comment coming in from Tim Healy. Ari, yes, SA provides unemployment allowance but not student allowance, whereas BOTS does the latter. Which I agree with, because, you know, you give people that student allowance so that they can focus on their studies, get qualifications, get jobs, and be able to be active contributors.
But you don't give them jobs,
That
Chief.
name is Tiny Healy, not Tim.
Oh, Tiny Healy. Sorry, my eyesight there.
Yeah, but I mean, this is my problem. A lot of these kids, and there's more and more, youth unemployment is increasing because these kids are graduating from university and then there's nothing. There's no jobs for them.
Yeah, but then the solution to that is not to keep them home because they've already got these skills. The solution for that is to find a way that their skills can contribute. And their skills are not going to contribute by them sitting at home.
What makes you think they will want to sit at home? Kind of, that's my whole problem, Chief, is this assumption that people want to just sit at home and do nothing. Nobody wants to just sit at home and do nothing, Chief.
Okay, last comment here from the time. Yeah, before we wrap up the show, you know. Bishop Gary, Ari, I want to prove to you that when you give handouts to people, it makes them lazy. Go around and see the youth who are idle-minded and always waiting to receive from their parents or whoever. Those people don't care how much money is earned. All they want to do is spend money on nyaupe, drugs and all. We have seen this in our places where kids end up stealing to buy drugs. The government is doing its best to give BATSWANA opportunities so that they work. But when they get employment, what do? They want to work. They don't want to work because they are used to handouts. This mentality must stop. Henceforth, let's work and develop ourselves.
I'm sorry, that's completely...
Sweat for your cash and you value it.
I'm sorry, that's completely false. Youth unemployment is higher where the population, most of the country is, right? So that's not true, right? Those kids aren't the trust fund kids that are getting allowances from their parents. It's just a completely false characterization of people, and I find it very insulting.
Yeah, I'd just like to give a massive thank you to Bishop for tuning in. You've been very active with your comments. So
yes, thank you very much for your comments,
lot,
Bishop.
Yeah, yeah. Look, my final thought for today's debate, you know, it's that. Look, we live in a society, in a world where we can't ignore the realities of things like a functioning economy, things like a good GDP. And, you know, economically and factually speaking, without getting emotional about it, these things come from things like taxes, from organizations making profit and things like that. So how do you become a valuable contributor to an organization? It's by having something to offer, right? Now, the opposite of that is by where you have your skill that you want to offer, but then somebody comes along and says, actually, you know what? I'll pay you to just sit at home and not utilize your skill. So, you know, all of the social welfare models around the world have seen in some level how people take advantage of them and claim that, you know, they're actually looking for employment when they're not. This happens a lot in the UK. It happens a lot with black communities in the US, things like Social Security. I think that was actually one of the reasons why George Floyd was in that shop trying to cash that unemployment check, right? And then they realized it was a fraudulent check. So look, my position, hey man, I don't get a gig, you know? It's tough to be unemployed, but it's also worse to just get handouts. So you gotta work for your money.
Yeah, I definitely, my thoughts, right? I definitely think that there's a real flawed perceived wisdom that's not backed up by any scientific evidence at all, which is that when people get things a little bit easier, then they are going to become lazy. Right? That's not borne out by any model. It's not borne out by any statistical facts anywhere. Right? It's just a theory that what I believe, a theory that often wealthy people, right, and ruling class generally like to forward because it suits them to keep things exactly the way that they are. But the reality is people want to be productive. People want to utilize their skills. And we need to make it easier for people to change their dreams. To chase their dreams, sorry. And we especially need to do this in a society where we are finding it harder and harder to create opportunities for people. We are finding it harder and harder to make use of our skilled youth. And these people are sitting at home, but they can't afford art supplies. They can't afford to buy a laptop. They can't afford an internet connection so that he can actually try and develop this program that he wants to do. They can't afford to sit and focus and invest in their dreams. So I think if we really are serious about diversifying our economy, we need to be radical. We need to come up with radical ideas that completely shift our economy. And I think the best place to start is where we say we're going to help those people that are really in need, the people that can't find jobs, the people that are looking. And on that note, thank you very much everyone who has tuned in today. It's been another special VOP episode. I'm Chief Fangz, he's Chief. I'm gonna see you guys next week.
From the moment we wake up, we step into the shoes that are ready to conquer the day. Places to go, people to see, but there's no stopping this beauty. So let go and be free to celebrate your confidence. Take control of your day with Legends Legendary Wave products to keep your wave sensational this season. Apply wave control evenly over the waves to keep your hair soft, smooth, with a gentle shine to give you the confidence you need to change the world. Live your legacy in style. Ease into the smooth wave of the day and become unstoppable. Be legendary with Legends Barbershop, living your legacy in style.
What you're looking for.
Your specially grilled newspaper, spiced with lifestyle, sport, entertainment, politics, business, and international news. The Voice is available every Friday. Subscribe now. The Voice. Let's find some!